Revealed, the touching truth behind a little girl's PLEA that transformed a CEO's life forever. Amy's heart raced as she shuffled between the cold, fluorescent lights of the diner and the clatter of customers demanding more coffee and pie. She wiped her brow, wishing for a moment of stillness, a breath untainted by the weight of exhaustion. Just 38, but feeling like she was drowning in the chaos of her double life. She needed both jobs to keep the roof over her daughter's head, and yet, each evening's descent into the chaos left little room for the precious bedtime stories Lily craved. Silence permeated their home like a thick fog, it ached. Over the sound of dishes clattering, she thought of the last time she had truly connected with her daughter. Was it really weeks ago? She could see Lily's bright smile faltering behind those big, innocent eyes, the awareness of her struggles settling in like an unwelcome guest. How was she supposed to keep Lily's dreams alive while drowning in deadlines? The thought gnawed at her, and doubt wrapped around her heart like a vine threatening to choke the life out of her. As she navigated another busy night, the pressure built. Could she be more than just a paycheck? Was being a mother enough if she couldn't give her daughter laughter and adventure? The realization surged through her with an alarming clarity she was failing. The frantic pace of her life brought her back to the morning's fervent promise to Lily of reading Little Princess together, but the truth was, Amy hadn't opened the book in days. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Meanwhile, in his polished office filled with accolades and cold ambition, Mark Daniels stared at his computer screen, trapped in a whirlwind of corporate sabotage. A scandal threatened his empire. He clenched his jaw, thoughts racing, fighting against the very elements that made him who he was. Memories of his estranged daughter gnawed at him, clawing through layers of corporate bravado. What was the point of progress if he couldn't forge connections? The clock ticked ominously as he read a letter sent by an unknown child, delicate crayon strokes articulating dreams of happiness and fear. Her words were simple yet profound, resonating with the emptiness swirling within him. Her longing for connection echoed the isolation he felt every day. It was a plea that twisted his gut, the stark reminder of a child left behind like a forgotten memo on his desk. Could he reach out and embrace something real, something raw, amidst the sterile board meetings and profit margins? A singular thought clawed at his insides: could changing course mean risking everything? And if so, was it worth it to pursue a connection rather than a career? Racing against the clock, Amy felt her world teetering on the brink. Just when she thought she was settling into her routines, a fragile thread connected her life with Mark S. and the looming realization broke over her like a cold wave: betrayal was coming. Would investing her trust in an enigmatic CEO mean another painful lesson learned? Would she lose Lily in the process? The teetering tension left her heart pounding as she tried to imagine her daughter's face when the ripple effects of her choices hit. How far could she push back against the forces threatening to pull her under? And as shadows of betrayal loomed, all that remained was the question: who would she fight for, herself or her child? Amy wiped her hands on her apron and took a moment to gather her thoughts. The din of conversations and clinking cutlery faded into the background as she centered on her breathing. She could feel the heat rising from her cheeks, not from indignance but from an internal struggle, a tug-of-war between ambition and nurturing a pure connection. The burden of hope mixed with uncertainty threatened to drag her into the depths of worry. There had to be a way to navigate through this chaos. As the clock ticked closer to closing time, Amy's mind flickered with possibilities. What if she could transform not just her present circumstances, but her entire outlook on life? She envisioned rallying her scattered energy and focusing it on something potent: her passion for writing. Every night, while Lily slept, she de-scribbled thoughts, fragments of emotions that begged for expression, yearning for an outlet that could lead to more. Could storytelling, crafted with love, sparked the joy they both craved. It was with a sense of urgency that Amy started to draft her ideas. She flicked through old notebooks, torn pages littered with dreams of weaving tales that would not only entertain but heal. Each word she penned felt like a step towards re-establishing her identity beyond that of a tired waitress. She realized she had been trapped in a cycle, where work and worry enveloped every thought, squeezing out the vibrancy of creativity that had once defined her. Meanwhile, Mark's relentless pursuit of success had ensnared him in a web of corporate deceit, but quickly, the crayon-scribbled letter haunted his mind. How could he reconcile his achievements against the void left by his daughter? Emotion clawed at him, coaxing him to confront feelings long buried. He began to imagine a world where he could truly make amends, perhaps not just superficially, but in a way that redeemed him. As days passed, Mark grew more determined to shift his focus from profit to connection. Ceasing the cutthroat tactics that plagued his company felt like a monumental step, but he felt an inexplicable pull towards the heart of his business, a vision of fostering a more humane approach to corporate success. Each decision made in his office now felt intertwined with the lingering thought of Lily. What kind of legacy would he leave behind? One evening, after a grueling day weighed down by secrecy, Mark found himself compelled to seek inspiration. Navigating through the damp streets, he stumbled upon a small café, its welcoming glow an invitation amidst the fog of his thoughts. Inside, the hum of voices painted an atmosphere of warmth. Glasses clinked and laughter echoed, but as he surveyed the crowd, his gaze fell upon a woman, her face caught in shadow as she scribbled fervently in a notebook. Amy felt the stirring of a new energy in her chest, a pulse of determination as she glanced around the café, feeling strangely vulnerable but alive among the hushed conversations and comforting smells of coffee and pastries. It was as if the universe was nudging her towards something bigger than herself, an inexplicable meeting that could defy the odds, perhaps even rewrite her narrative. Mark took a deep breath, his executive demeanor cracking slightly as he approached the vibrant spirit sitting at the table. All the while, questions swirled in his mind. Who was this woman chasing dreams, buried under the weight of her worries? And what would this connection cost him? The evening hung thick in the air, both filled with discontent and ripe with potential. Their paths were about to collide in a way that felt preordained, as uncertainty mingled with hope. What would be revealed in this meeting? Would they dare to reach across the chasm that separated them both? For Amy, this moment represented a choice. Would she confront her fear of the unknown by opening herself to possibilities, or retreat back into the safe confines of her predictable life? Would Mark be willing to risk everything for the chance at reconnection, or would he bow once more to the chains of ambition? As they exchanged tentative glances, it was clear the real journey was just beginning. Amy's heart raced as Mark drew closer, his hesitant footsteps echoing her own inner turmoil. She could see his executive poise struggling against something more raw, something genuine that flickered behind the polished facade. They were two souls grappling with their pasts, searching for meaning in a world that often felt devoid of it. As he sat down, she quickly scanned the café, assessing her surroundings as if they held the answers she sought. The smells of fresh pastries entwined with the bittersweet aroma of brewed coffee created a sense of comfort, yet fear pulsed beneath the surface. "What are you writing?" Mark's voice disrupted her thoughts, smooth yet carrying an undertone of curiosity that made her heart leap. It's just some stories," she replied, unsure how to navigate this dialogue. The weight of their unspoken histories pressed upon them both. "I kind of want to explore feelings, dive into life's messiness, I guess." Mark nodded, and for a moment, she glimpsed a flicker of understanding in his eyes. "Messiness, huh? I'm beginning to realize that we often bury that messiness beneath layers of success and ambition." His admission surprised her. This was not what she expected from a man in his position. She had been ready to encounter a hardened corporate warrior but found instead a man grappling with remorse and reflection. She steadied herself and shifted the conversation. "And what brings you to a little cafe like this?" "I needed a break," he said, but she sensed more beneath the surface. "From what?" She pressed gently, instinctively aware that beneath his corporate mask lay a man in search of clarity. "From myself, I think," he replied, his face shifting to one of vulnerability. I've spent years building an empire but lost sight of what it meant to actually connect with people. My daughter's letter, it jolted me. Amy's heartbeat quickened, they were drawing closer to a shared truth. It's a heavy burden to carry. What do you plan to do with that realization? She leaned in, intrigued by the possibility that they could be allies in uncovering their multiple layers. I plan to make it count, he said with a fierceness that resonated within her. I want to redefine how I operate, how my company operates on a foundation of humanity rather than profit alone. But it's terrifying. I understand terrors of the heart, Amy admitted. But perhaps those very fears are what can lead us to something extraordinary. When I write, I confront the fear of judgment, of failure, and it pushes me. Maybe you'll find the same in your journey. Mark's gaze flickered with a spark of hope as if her words were the glimmering light he'd been seeking. Perhaps you're right. It's just how to take that first step. Start small, she encouraged, feeling the weight of their conversation crack something open within her. What's the smallest thing you can change today? He leaned back, contemplating. I could open a dialogue with my employees about transparency. It's a start, right? Yes. And who knows what can grow from that? Amy's enthusiasm surprised her, sparking a fire of possibility. As they continued their conversation, time faded away. Each word exchanged began to weave a connection deeper than either had anticipated, both drawn towards a similar craving for authenticity. It felt like a shared pact, a gentle commitment to explore their respective transformations. But as the clock ticked away, Amy caught herself realizing how entwined their destinies had become in such a short time. Suddenly, the stakes felt higher. A bond formed in a single evening could lead to unexpected clarity or shattering dilemmas. Would the pact they were forming strengthen their resolves, or would it push them to confront even harsher truths about themselves? She took a deep breath, knowing that every decision made now could ripple into their future. She had opened a door within herself, but would Mark be able to follow her through it? As they exchanged determined looks, one question loomed large: what would they uncover in the days to come, and would it lead them to the redemption they sought or deeper into their personal messiness? Gathering her belongings, Amy felt a surge of excitement and anxiety blend together. She dismissed the notion of the cafe as a mere backdrop to their conversation. It had transformed into a crucible of potential and danger. Mark's vulnerability lifted a heavy shield within her, emboldening her to face her own fears about storytelling and connection. As they walked out, a soft drizzle began to fall, adding a fresh scent of earthiness to the air. Amy glanced over at Mark, who was looking up at the sky with a thoughtful expression, as if the rain might wash away more than just the day. She felt a pulse of empathy. They were both in a storm of change. What do you think comes next? She asked, aiming for grounding clarity amid the uncertainty. I guess I have to confront the elephant in the room, Mark replied, a slight smirk appearing as though he was testing the waters of his own self-deprecation. The employees need to know I'm not the impenetrable fortress they might think I am. Exactly, she encouraged, her heart racing at the thought of him opening up. This is your chance to set a precedent, to create a ripple effect. The vulnerability you show can inspire them. As they strode past the quaint storefronts, Mark's demeanor shifted from contemplative to determined. His resolve was palpable, igniting something within her. She realized her own voice was growing bolder as well. And I should be open about my struggles, too. Sharing that I'm working through my writing insecurities could change how I relate to my own audience. Let us hold each other accountable, Mark suggested, his eyes narrowing with intent. You share your drafts, and I'll share my internal dialogues. The thought sent a thrill down Amy's spine. The idea of inviting someone, especially him, into her creative process felt vulnerable but electrifying. They formed an unspoken commitment, a pact that would push them both into an unknown realm of honesty they had yet to explore. Soon, they reached a fork in the road. Mark paused, his gaze fixed downward, contemplating. Will you join me at my office tomorrow? I want to lay the groundwork for that dialogue with my team. Amy hesitated. The thought of stepping into his corporate world, a landscape she felt was foreign and intimidating, struck the nerve of her self-doubt. Was she equipped for that? However, the encouragement in his eyes prompted her to respond. Yes, I will. Great, Mark said, relief flooding over his features. Yet as they parted ways with a brief embrace, Amy sensed an undercurrent of tension within herself. This was more than just a step into a space she did not fully understand, it was a plunge into her own vulnerabilities. At home, she wrestled with her thoughts, pouring them into her notebook late into the night. The vulnerability she had found in Mark accompanied her as she wrestled with the complex feelings of her every word. The stakes felt higher now, the stories she wanted to tell somehow connected to this newfound courage to speak hers aloud. But with each line she wrote, the shadows of intimidation loomed larger. The fear of judgment, of perceived failure. What if she faltered? What if she shared too much? Yet, paradoxically, the more she contemplated her fears, the more inspiration churned within her. Change was unraveling, and she couldn't deny the thrill sending ripples of hope along her spine. As she closed her notebook, a single thought flashed through her mind: what transformative truths would life reveal when they both dared to embrace their vulnerability? A chilling realization settled in. This journey was spinning into terrain neither had prepared for. The next day awaited them with endless possibilities that shimmered just out of reach. Would this be a breakthrough filled with awakening, or would the fear of authenticity choke their efforts? With a quiver of excitement slicing the tension, Amy closed her eyes, knowing she had to be ready for whatever came next. The face-to-face confrontation was imminent, and the pull between danger and creativity might very well change everything. Amy awoke to the soft pattering of rain against her window, a reminder of the unpredictable nature of the day ahead. The familiar scent of coffee brewed through her kitchen, but even the warmth of her favorite mug felt distant. She flicked through her notes from last night, the words tangled up with uncertainty and exhilaration. Today would reveal not only Mark's journey but her own as well. They had pledged vulnerability, a promise woven with the threads of fear and hope. As she dressed, each piece of clothing felt like armor against her insecurities. She chose a plain blouse and comfortable jeans, conscious of looking professional yet approachable. In the mirror, she practiced her smile, searching for the blend of confidence and authenticity. With each repetition, she noticed her reflection changing from uncertainty to a spark of determination. Stepping onto the bustling street, she felt the cool moisture in the air mix with the warmth of expectation. The rain had lessened, though the clouds lingered, much like her apprehension. Arriving at the corporate office, Amy stood momentarily at the entrance, watching the flow of employees each engrossed in their routines. They appeared engaged, but she wondered how many wore their own masks of invulnerability, just like Mark. "Hey! You made it!" Mark's voice cut through her thoughts as he approached, a disarming smile breaking across his face. The tension in his demeanor seemed to ease upon seeing her. "I wouldn't miss it," she replied, summoning authenticity. As they entered the conference room, the familiar scent of coffee and fresh pastries mingled with her burgeoning nerves. A semicircle of faces turned to them, some familiar, others new. She felt the weight of their expectations, heavy and palpable their perceptions of Mark and, by extension, herself. "Thank you all for being here today," Mark began, his voice steady yet laced with an edge of vulnerability. "I want to have an honest conversation about what it means to be authentic here at work, and how we can support each other through our challenges." Amy's heart raced as she listened, absorbing the courage radiating from him. He shared bits of his journey, the struggles, the moments of doubt. Each sentence peeled away layers of the invincible persona he had carried. In that intimate space, she felt an urge to join him, to reveal her own struggles. When Mark gestured to her, inviting her to share, the democracy of vulnerability gripped her tightly. "I, too, grapple with self-doubt in my work, especially when it comes to writing." Her voice trembled initially, but she pressed on. "I often feel I'm not good enough, that I don't possess the skill to connect meaningfully." The admission sprang forth, surprising even her. To her astonishment, nods of understanding rippled through the room. Surrounded by a mosaic of diverse experiences, she saw eyes reflecting back the same fears she harbored. The quiet solidarity settled in, reshaping the dynamics of the room as they began to exchange stories. As the dialogue deepened, the atmosphere morphed from formal to something decidedly more intimate. Mark's gaze met hers, an unspoken acknowledgement passing between them. Their pact of vulnerability had birthed something pivotal. But as she began to feel buoyed by the connection forming, a nagging thought reared its head. What if this openness was met with resistance? What if their efforts to break through corporate facades fell flat? Each success in the room sparked a flicker of self-doubt, teasing at the edges of her newfound courage. Just then, as Mark encouraged a junior team member to share, the door swung open, and another executive stepped in. The room shifted. The newcomer wielded an air of authority that felt cold and unyielding. The moment was charged, threatening to unravel the warmth they had begun to cultivate. Amy's heart raced at the breach. Was this the moment of truth she feared? If confrontation was on the horizon, where did that leave their newfound connection, and could it withstand the impending storm? A stark reality settled in. As she braced herself for the uncertainty ahead, her conviction wavering but nonetheless alive. The stakes had been raised, and she couldn't turn back now. Would they fight to maintain their authenticity in the face of potential condemnation? The showdown beckoned, and Amy wondered, was she truly prepared to navigate this treacherous landscape ahead? Amy's heart sank at the sight of the imposing executive. The atmosphere in the room shifted palpably, tension coiling tightly around her chest. Conversation halted momentarily, as the new presence demanded attention like an autumn storm overtaking a gentle breeze. The authority radiating from this man seemed poised to extinguish the tentative connection that had begun to blossom. "Apologies for the interruption," the executive said, his tone clipped and formal. There was no warmth in his eyes, just a sharp tactical focus that scanned the room. "I require all hands for a meeting regarding the upcoming initiative. I expect productivity, not vulnerabilities." Her stomach churned. She could feel Mark's unease radiating beside her, an uncomfortable energy that prickled against their earlier openness. It was a stark reminder of the corporate mask they were all expected to wear, an invisible barrier threatening to isolate them from one another. As the executive launched into a directive about quarterly goals and numbers, Amy's mind raced. Each monotonous bullet point was a reminder of the friction between authenticity and the facades they all donned in the office. Voices droned on about metrics and statistics, drowning out her instincts that shouted for them to rise against the tide of social conformity. But there it was, a flicker of rebellion growing in her chest. This would not be the moment she would back down. Her thoughts hurtled back to what had been shared moments prior. The warmth of connection with Mark had unraveled the tightly wound threads of her self-doubt, and now she felt the urge to fortify that bond against this cold onslaught. The executive's dismissive tone spurred her forward. It was time to act, to reclaim voice and purpose. With her heart pounding, Amy squeezed Mark's arm gently to signal. He glanced at her, a question hanging in the air that only they understood. She was willing to take a risk, to step further into the light of vulnerability. "Actually, if I may interrupt," she said, her voice breaking slightly at first but gaining steadiness as she continued. The executive frowned, clearly caught off guard. The silence that followed felt heavy, but a spark ignited in Amy a realization that vulnerability can be an act of immense bravery. "We've been discussing how to create a more authentic workplace, one where we support each other's personal and professional challenges. This isn't about soft metrics, it's about fostering honesty and integrity," she asserted, feeling the conviction in her heart feeding her words. The executive's face turned impassive, but Amy pressed on, her pulse thrumming in her ears. "If we dismiss the value of those open discussions, how can we truly innovate or engage? Facts are vital, yet they lack the human dimension that drives change." Mark smiled, a mixture of admiration and surprise as he caught the gleam of determination in her eyes. The junior team member who had just spoken earlier braved a supportive nod, and soon others were following suit, whispers breaking out in quiet encouragement. The executive shifted uncomfortably, caught between the growing resistance and his authoritative posture. Meanwhile, Amy felt stronger, a team pooling their voices around her. The courage coalescing surging through her forged an invisible shield against the corporate coldness that threatened to dominate. But, beneath the surface, anxiety nagged at her. Had she crossed a line? With courage welling up, would there be consequences, not just for her, but for Mark and the others who had dared to connect moments earlier? Doubt threatened to claw back at her confidence, a reminder of how easily the dynamics could shift. Just then, she caught the executive scowling as whispers turned into murmurs of dissent. His eyes narrowed, not at her, but at the gathering energy in the room threatening to usurp his authority. Let us see how far this goes, Amy thought, her heart racing not just from fear but from purpose. It was no longer about a simple meeting, it was about what they were willing to sacrifice for. Authenticity. As tension rose, she realized that hearts and minds were unpredictable variables. Where would it lead them? The crossroads loomed ahead, steeped in uncertainty. Little did she know, the pushback could provoke dramatic changes that she hadn't anticipated. Would their effort to uphold authenticity prevail, or would it result in dire repercussions? The air crackled with tension as something shifted in the executive's expression. The moment of truth was approaching, and Amy braced herself for whatever fallout awaited. The silence continued to thicken in the room, each second stretching into an eternity. Amy's thoughts raced. Was she prepared for the trajectory she had just set in motion? The executive's gaze scanned the room as if searching for dissenting voices that could snuff out her burgeoning confidence. A bead of sweat trickled down her back, but she steeled herself against the creeping doubt. She had taken the leap, there was no turning back now. Your feelings about this are noted, Amy, the executive replied, his voice curt. However, at this company, we adhere to structure over sentiment. We simply don't have time for this authenticity talk. His dismissive tone hung in the air, but Amy felt an unexpected surge of support beside her. Mark shifted closer, his presence a quiet reminder that she wasn't alone. She looked into the eyes of her colleagues, noticing nods and glances that conveyed silent solidarity. Maybe this was the awakening she had been craving, a realization that pushing the boundaries of her perceived limitations might actually strengthen the bonds of her team. The structure is important, she shot back, her voice firming with every word, but structure without connection leads to a hollow workplace. We might hit targets, but what about morale? What about innovation that springs from collaboration? The executive's expression tightened, but for the first time, Amy sensed a crack in his armor. Uncertainty flickered beneath his stern exterior, as if her words had sparked something that he hadn't anticipated. Perhaps he, too, recognized the absurdity of prioritizing cold efficiency over human connection, even if he wouldn't admit it publicly. In the moments that followed, she became acutely aware of her body language. She stood tall, shoulders back, channeling the confidence that had started to blossom. Each heartbeat felt like a battle drum, reverberating with a call for courage. What if she could sharpen her voice, transform this meeting into the catalyst for not just her growth, but for the transformation of the entire team? I believe we can integrate both, she continued, drawing strength from the supportive energy rising around her. What if we held sessions where we could gather ideas and share our aspirations? Wouldn't that create a richer environment for success? A whisper of murmurs broke out in the room, urging others to consider her proposal. The executive interrupted sharply, this isn't a brainstorming session. I need clear strategies, not soft ideas. Then let us blend both, Amy countered, emboldened. We can develop statistical strategies that stem from a connection-driven foundation. I propose a pilot program. Let us test the waters and see if our work improves. If results don't follow, I will step back. A daring challenge hung in the air, one that could either shatter her career aspirations or propel her into new realms of leadership. The executive's brow furrowed, and the room became a cauldron of tension. She held her breath. Would her boldness inspire others, or mark her as a pariah? Suddenly, Mark spoke up, I support Amy's idea. If we believe in our team, we should believe that authenticity will yield results. His endorsement melted some of the ice, emboldening others to join in. A chorus of agreement began to swell, collectively puncturing the suffocating atmosphere that had dominated the meeting. The executive's jaw tightened, but he maintained a careful mask. "Fine," he relented with a reluctant edge, "I'll entertain your proposal." As relief flooded through her, Amy felt a surge of adrenaline. She had managed to push a conservative agenda toward openness, but would this really return them to the authenticity she craved? Could this small victory stir the much deeper changes required in their corporate culture? As the meeting adjourned, Amy's mind spun with possibilities. What awaited them next? The ripple she had set in motion glimmered with an uncertain promise. Would the shift toward authenticity hold, or would she find herself battling not just the executive, but facing deeper insecurities within herself? Fingers brushing against the edge of her notes, she ventured a glance around the room. Hope mingled with trepidation. They were at the brink of a decisive moment, one that could redefine her place within the company. Holding on to that thought, she sat at her desk, contemplating her next steps. Mark approached her, fatigue contrasting with admiration in his eyes. "You were incredible," he said. But amidst the lingering praise, a question lingered: would this moment serve as a turning point or reignite a battle for authenticity that would come at a great cost? And thus, with anticipation lurking at the back of her mind, she felt the weight of choices ahead. The most telling would be whether to pursue the fervent change ignited within her or retreat back to familiarity. As the weeks passed after the meeting, an undercurrent of change began to ripple through the team. They held the first creativity session as Amy had proposed, gathering insights and aspirations mingled with their daily duties. The atmosphere was electric with potential, and each meeting morphed from a mundane obligation into a canvas for innovation. Amy felt a sense of purpose bloom within her, a purpose she hadn't realized she was starved for in the rigid corporate structure. But alongside her newfound excitement came a nagging doubt. It whispered reminders of the executive's initial dismissal of her ideas. Had she inadvertently set herself on a collision course with him? The thought haunted her as she sat at her desk, sifting through piles of paperwork. Each document felt like a reminder of the boundaries she had once tiptoed around. A tug of fear gripped her. Could she truly sustain this momentum? Reality slithered into her thoughts, the risk of exposure loomed. During one of the sessions, Amy raised her hand to share a suggestion, but the words stuck in her throat, hesitant to step into the spotlight once more. "Why don't we," she began cautiously, "explore how emotional intelligence can enhance our collaboration?" The room fell silent, her confidence wavers as the executive's expression flashed through her mind. But she pressed on, fueled by her desire to convert doubt into determination. "Emotional intelligence," she explained, steadying her voice, "can help us connect and enhance our effectiveness as a team." The initial nodding encouragement from Mark steadied her nerves, infusing her with the needed support. Voices began to rise in agreement, the energy swirling around the room like a tangible force, opening pathways of dialogue that seemed previously closed. Perhaps every small victory, such as this session, was a reminder of her resilience. As she took in the collective inputs, Amy recognized a hidden strength within her. Slowly, it dawned on her that leading change wasn't merely about bravado, it was about fostering an environment where everyone felt valued. Ideas began flowing more freely than before, and laughter punctuated serious discussions, a testament to the transformation underway. However, the executive remained an ever-looming threat. In the shadows of her team's success, Amy studied his demeanor during their sessions. He observed, arms crossed, wearing a mask of skepticism that belied his rigid stance. Energy coursed through her veins, this was her moment to confront the underlying tension. With her colleagues benefiting from the shifts, she could no longer allow the executive to be the gatekeeper of their spirit. She started crafting a structured proposal for a longer-term program, detailing measurable outcomes and the potential for increased productivity through emotional support. As she ran the draft through her mind, excitement was tempered by the notion of backlash. Had she overstepped her bounds? Would this be the flashpoint that ignited not only her risk of redundancy but also derailed her career? The complexity of the corporate landscape began to feel like a tangled web where each thread was another potential setback. After a few restless nights, Amy decided to invite Mark for coffee, hoping to test the waters. As they sat across from each other, steam curling from their mugs, he leaned in. "You are on to something, Amy." But confronting the executive directly could backfire. It'll take a different kind of strategy. At that moment, clarity washed over her. To effect real change, she had to do more than advocate, she needed to craft alliances and engage in subtle navigation. If she could find a way to present her ideas not as a challenge but as collaborative enhancement, perhaps she could break through the executive's facade. Excitement mingled with trepidation. Could this be the strategy that brought her success? With a resolve solidified by self-discovery, she set her goals. The time had come to understand the intricacies of office politics while embracing her audacity. Yet beneath her confidence, fear lingered, creating a dissonant tension as she prepared to approach the executive once again. This time, she would address her vision for the team not as a mere suggestion but as a necessity. Amy took a deep breath, ready to take the plunge into a new confrontation, the ultimate test of her evolving leadership. But would the executive recognize her growth, or would he see it as a threat? As she stepped forward into uncharted territory, she understood one vital truth: in the dance of corporate life, every step could lead to the sweet rhythm of success or the dissonance of defeat. Would she embrace the challenge that lay ahead? With these thoughts swirling in her mind, she gathered her notes, determined to implement her strategy, a catalyst poised for the next critical encounter. With the proposal clutched tightly in her hands, Amy entered the executive's office, her heart pounding like a drum. The walls felt as if they were closing in, adorned with awards and accolades, remnants of successes that only deepened her self-doubt. She caught a glimpse of herself in the polished surface of the desk, a mix of determination woven with trepidation in her expression. This was a battlefield that she had underestimated, a challenge that could define her trajectory within the company once and for all. "Morning, Amy," the executive greeted without lifting his gaze from a document spread out before him. His voice held the familiar rigidity, a barrier she had learned to navigate but never fully bypass. Today was different. Today, she wasn't merely there to share ideas, she was there to assert her vision. "Thank you for seeing me. I wanted to discuss our recent sessions and an opportunity one think we shouldn't overlook," she began, forcing her voice to remain steady despite the tremor beneath. His eyes flicked up, skepticism etched deep in the lines of his forehead. "Opportunity? Go ahead, but be concise." "I have a busy schedule." His terse response ignited a fire in her belly, pushing her adrenaline higher. "We've seen incredible engagement and creativity from the team since we started focusing on emotional intelligence. I believe we can capitalize on this momentum by institutionalizing practices that support mental well-being and effective collaboration." As she spoke, she noticed how his eyes narrowed, weighing her words like a cautious judge testing the limits of a case. This moment felt monumental. For every word she delivered, she was injecting her essence into the conversation, hoping to weave a bond with someone whose approval had once felt unattainable. Emotional intelligence was a nice touch, but ultimately, this is a business. He leaned back, arms crossed defiantly. "How does this translate into quantifiable results?" A harsh chill raced through her. Here lay the fracture. His incessant fixation on hard numbers overshadowed the nuances she believed were critical for genuine progress. Yet, she had formulated a responsive strategy, one where metrics would emerge effortlessly from her vision. "By developing support systems, we can reduce turnover and increase productivity, which impacts our bottom line substantially. I've drafted a program that..." He interrupted. "Drafts are great, but this is about execution. Show me results, Amy, tangible ones. Make believers out of your colleagues first." Her thoughts raced, a potential realignment rippling through her. Was he genuinely dismissing her, or was he challenging her to dig deeper? She recalled Mark's earlier warning: this required finesse, a demonstration of mutual benefit. "Let us pilot this with a small segment of the team," she suggested, quickening her pace to match her shifting thoughts. If we can prove its effectiveness there, it would provide the data needed to widen the scope. It's not a hard sell, but rather, a natural growth we can foster together. I'll gather data and manage the implementation. For a moment, silence stretched uncomfortably between them, the electronic hum of machinery far away reminding her how drastically stakes had changed. The executive's brow furrowed, considering her words. You'll take the lead on this? His tone hardened, but beneath it lurked a glimmer of intrigue. Yes, I can manage everything necessary to report back metrics to you, she asserted, matching his intensity with resolve. Here was her moment. If she faltered, she risked losing everything. Fine, he relented slowly, the corners of his mouth barely twitching. You'll need to win over the team first. I'll expect updates in 2 weeks. As she exited his office, a kaleidoscope of emotions swirled within her, exhilaration mixed with apprehension. She had taken a pivotal leap, placing her fate on the fragile bridge between her vision and the corporate structure that oppressed change. Sitting back at her desk, she leaned into the momentum she had created, recalling how repressed her voice had felt only weeks prior. Now, she was poised to guide her team into uncharted territory, equipped with a profound understanding of each individual's contribution to their collective success. This was not just about her growth anymore, it was about cultivating a culture of acceptance and enthusiasm. Yet a whisper of doubt lingered. Would her colleagues embrace this piloted vision as she hoped, or would it flop under the weight of skeptical viewpoints just as the executive had? The stakes felt insurmountable. One misjudged maneuver could unravel everything she had fought to create. With renewed determination, Amy dove into her preparations for the upcoming team meeting, knowing that each word spoken would become the fabric binding their collective journey forward. But even as she crafted her plans, she sensed a shadow loomed at the fringes, one that threatened to disrupt not just her project but her evolving identity. Before she began typing her first outline, her phone buzzed unexpectedly, the subject line sending a chill down her spine: urgent, change in leadership structure. As Amy read the email, the world around her stilled. A change in leadership could mean many things. This unsettling development could signal anything from a promoting executive leadership to a restructuring that might undermine her newfound endeavors. Her heart raced as she fought through a storm of anxiety. Would her project on emotional intelligence be stifled before it even took flight? Determined, she pushed aside her fears and reminded herself of the pledge she had made, the promise to inspire authenticity and vulnerability amongst her team. The shift in leadership could be a challenge but could also represent a fresh start, another opportunity to shape a compassionate approach to corporate culture. With newfound resolve, Amy focused on her preparation for the team meeting scheduled for the next day. She meticulously outlined her proposal while integrating feedback she had gathered from team sessions, showcasing how emotional intelligence could spark innovation. This was no mere proposal, it was the embodiment of her evolution, a testament to her growth from a waitress burdened by self-doubt to a leader willing to take risks for the good of her team and herself. The next day, as colleagues filled the meeting room, each face reflected a mix of curiosity and skepticism. She was acutely aware of the executive's looming presence, but she held on to the belief that what she had envisioned could transform not only their team but the wider company. "Thank you all for coming today," Amy began, her voice steady, but the butterflies in her stomach felt like fireworks. "I want to share a project that leverages our recent discussions about emotional intelligence, focusing on fostering a supportive environment that can drive both personal engagement and company success." As she shared the details, Amy observed her colleagues leaning in, some nodding in agreement. With each statistic, each anecdote, she wove a tapestry of vision, connecting the dots between emotional understanding and measurable results. The earnestness in her voice resonated louder than numbers. What she was selling was not a product but a culture of genuine human connection, a pursuit that could transform their workplace. As she wrapped up her presentation, a wave of applause broke out, invigorating her soul. A fellow team member raised a hand. "This is incredible, Amy. The risk we often face when we're isolated can grip our productivity. I remember feeling drained before these sessions started." More voices chimed in, echoing support, and revealing shared struggles. Mark offered a proud smile from the back of the room, his eyes brimming with approval. The bond they had fostered was lighting a chain reaction, fueling the room's energy as her vision took on a life of its own. Just then, the door swung open. The executive strode in, an unnerving blend of authority and curiosity. Amy's stomach tightened momentarily. How would he perceive the momentum coursing through the room? As he approached, she felt a slight prick of vulnerability, but she quickly steeled her resolve. "I see we are discussing a project of tremendous potential," he began, his tone even, though the glint in his eye betrayed a flicker of interest. "Yes," Amy answered confidently. "And it directly aligns with our commitment to improve engagement and, ultimately, our productivity." The executive nodded slowly, the skepticism in his demeanor softening just enough for her to sense an opening. Amy pressed on, bolstering her points with enthusiasm. Her passion was now palpable, igniting something in the collective air between all of them. She found herself lost in the vision, no longer the timid employee but a spokesperson for authentic connection. Before long, the meeting concluded with an encouragement to formally implement her project on a trial basis. A rush of exhilaration swept over her. She had succeeded in rallying support not just for a project, but for a shift in their workplace identity. Days turned into weeks, and the trial evolved smoothly, unveiling startling results. Productivity soared as employees felt a renewed drive towards collaboration, their emotional well-being nurtured alongside their professional pursuits. Amy found herself celebrated in meetings and recognized for her contributions. Her fears faded away, replaced by a solid confidence that had been missing for so long. At one of the monthly reviews, the executive finally approached her, a hint of respect shadowing his expression. "You've managed quite a feat, Amy. It appears that your approach has far more merit than I anticipated. Let's discuss your potential for a broader leadership role within the company." This recognition was more than just a career advancement, it was validation of her transformation, the culmination of her journey from feeling like a cog in a machine to becoming a valued leader, ready to navigate the complexity of corporate relationships with empathy and authenticity. As she left the meeting that day, a sense of satisfaction washed over her. Standing beneath the open sky, she reveled in her achievements, the successful implementation of a project that had uplifted her colleagues, the perception she had shifted toward openness, and the steep climb she had taken toward her aspirations. Amy felt fulfilled not only as a professional but as a mother too. She devoted time to read with Lily, crafting narratives that incorporated the lessons learned from her journey. It was as if every story breathed life into her bond with her daughter, opening doors to adventures untold. And with that profound connection, clarity shimmered brightly within her. Both life and career had become art forms, intertwined in a dance of personal growth and fulfillment. This was not merely a successful end, but the profound beginning of a life she had dared to redefine, and she welcomed every moment of it. Challenge yourself to embrace your own potential for growth and connection. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, it really makes a difference. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now, this is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.